All right, ladies and gents, we've already completed the square once with the coefficient of 1. So let's run through the whole mix from the start when the coefficient is 1. All right, so what would the problem look like? It'll look like a graph. Sketch the graph. Labeling the vertex, axis of symmetry, and intercepts. Okay, and you need to know that they are both x and y intercepts. Okay, we're going to find all this information first. We don't walk into it. So first things first, they give you a problem that looks like this: f of x equals x squared minus 4x minus 5. And you're like, well, holy moly, I don't know what the vertex is. Well, good news is that the coefficient is 1, so technically right now, you know enough to wiggle your way through life, okay? So what you do is you'd give yourself some space for x, and then you'll take this minus 5, and you'll throw it all the way over there. And why? Because you're getting ready to put in that missing term that completes the square. And what is that missing term? And all of you guys, yes, are just like leaping out of your chairs. And you're saying to yourself, oh, yes, we know exactly what number we need to put in there, or at least how to find that number. And what you do is you take the b term and you divide it by 2, and then you finally square it. Well, what the b term is in this case is the number, and yes, you must take that negative with it, is negative 4. So don't forget to call that thing negative 4. So when you plug it in, you're going to have negative 4 divided by 2 squared. And that effectively will end up giving you negative 2, but I'm going to write that in a different color because we already talked about that being an important number because it tells you how it's going to factor. Negative 2, and that thing officially is squared. And that finally gives you a grandiose number, which is the number 4. And that's the money number, okay? Why is that the money number? Because the number 4 is going to be the number that's going to make this thing work out so beautifully and put it into vertex form so we can finally graph it, okay? So the problem really starts after we put it into vertex form. Until then, the problem never starts. So please make sure you guys take heed to this. So adding 4 in, it's a 1-to-1 exchange. Well, if I add it in, I better take it out simultaneously because it's not an equation. It's for sure an expression. There are not two sides for me to work on. All right? So now, this is the cool part. This factors into x minus if it would give me my colors, minus 2 squared. But then this is going to be leftovers. That gives me a minus 9 on the outside. So now, how do I know it's x minus 2? Well, we talked about this in the last video with that being a minus 2. Go back and watch it. It was a brief, like 35-second bit, but it is a strong point to take note of. Okay? But once you put that 4 in, note this is perfectly factorable. X squared minus 4, x minus 2, x minus 2. So it has to be x minus 2 squared. Okay, sometimes it's not that easy though. That gives you that. So that now we can finally go ahead and start the problem. The vertex is opposite of that negative 2, which is 2 minus 9, right? Which means the axis of symmetry has to be x equals 2. Easy, right? Y-intercept, some of you guys are good enough to do this in your head, okay? When x is 0, right? So make x equal 0, you end up getting minus 5, right? X is 0, 0 minus 2 is negative 2. Then square that is 4. 4 minus 9 minus 5, okay? So just plug it in, you'll get minus 5, okay? Or you can go to the side and do it, either or. So I literally go to the side and say f of 0. I keep remembering that you guys have to see what my hands are doing in order to actually get my points. So I gotta make sure I write things down. So that's 4, 9, which gives us minus 5. That's where the minus 5 came from. Okay. Now, finally, we can find our x-intercepts in the same fashion. X-intercepts. Okay. So if I make the y 0 and I'm looking for the x's, okay. So here we go. We're just going to isolate directly because the square is already completed. You did all the hard work. Okay. Does it always work out to these cute numbers like 2, 3, and 4? No, but you've done all the hard work. This is 9 equals x minus 2 squared. Don't forget when you square root it, it's going to be plus or minus. So it's going to be plus or minus 3 equals x minus 2. So effectively, you have, this is a plus 3. That'll be x equals 5 when I add that 2 over. If it was a minus 3, that'll be x equals minus 1. So that's an x-intercept here and an x-intercept there. So, note, you've started with a problem that was completely not ready to even be touched graphically. Now within 30 seconds, 45 seconds, we have all the information we need in order to graph it and to put our stamp of approval. So it's really, really easy. Now, granted, this is when the coefficient is 1. We'll talk about when the coefficient is not 1, what that will look like. Okay, so here we go. That's 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2, 9. There you go. Boom. Axis of symmetry goes through that. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is it opening upward? Yeah, it's opening upward. Absolutely. It's positive. That's a good thing. Y-intercepts at X-intercept is here, and 2, 3, 4, 5. So it looks something like this. And if I want to draw my axis of symmetry, there it is. Okay, but there we are. So completing the square is all that takes, okay? And it's a useful thing to know how to do, to be honest with you guys. All right, so let's talk about when the coefficient is not 1, okay? It might seem almost like magic, I promise you, okay? But it is not as magical as it may seem, okay? So let's talk about it. So let's say it looked like this instead. And I like that color. So look, we're going to do the same thing. So let's say the function was, so let's put f of x equals 2x squared plus 4x plus 6 into vertex form. Okay, so we want to go from that into vertex form. All right, so this is the goal. If I can do this, I can do this with everything. All right, so remember that coefficient being 1, it is not 1 anymore, it is 2, and that complicates things. So this is the process. All right, here we go from beginning. Okay, step 1. Okay, if the coefficient is not 1, this is effectively what you have to do. It's still the same thing. Get yourself some space. Okay, so this is the real instructions. First things first, get space. Okay, and I'll actually call this step 1.1 because I feel like the two things I'm getting ready to write, you could do them at the same time. Okay, 1.1, and then here's what you want to do. Step 1.2. Okay, at the same time while you're spreading these things apart, the reason why you're spreading your x stuff apart away from the number stuff is because the x stuff, so your x squared and the x, we're attempting to group them together. You guys remember grouping? Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're grouping it. So we're going to group it and we're going to factor out whatever is on that lead coefficient because I don't want it to be on, not 1. Because remember, if we know if it's 1, it's good to go, right? So we're going to group this in our head, right? So at the same time, while you're giving yourself some space, you're going to group it, and I want to snatch out this 2 out of both of them. So I'm going to factor out that 2. So what I end up with is I now want to factor out coefficient of x squared. So in this case, it's that 2. So what we end up with effectively, and I think we could do this all in one step, so both of these in one step, is pull the 2 out. You're left with x squared plus 2x. Don't forget to leave yourself some space inside of that parentheses. Okay, so be careful there. And then here's that plus 6. So effectively, I always think people can do both of these at the same time, but some people do need to break them down into steps. Note, doesn't matter on the order. You just need to do this first. It's very important. So this has to happen. So give yourself some space, and then when the x stuff, whatever it is, whatever that lead coefficient is, pull that out of both of those, okay? Even if it's the ugliest of numbers, you still must do that because we need the coefficient on the x squared to be 1. So if you notice here, that's what has happened. This is now 1. Okay, so that's the first piece of the puzzle. So the whole point of this was for number 1, coefficient on x squared must be 1. Okay, so that's the reason why we had to do this, because it must be 1. Now it's 1, okay? So now, from here, this is where things get easier, okay? So how do they get easier? Well, now we just needed to complete the square like we did before. So now, let's complete the square. I'm going to call it the Cadillac. Why? Because Cadillacs make CTSs. Complete the square. I don't know. All right, so here we go. So how do we complete the square? Well, we need the missing number. Well, what's the missing number? This is the b over 2ation. The b over 2 and then squared to figure out what that number is, but take note of what b over 2 is. Well, in this case, b is the number to itself, okay? So that b is going to become a 2. So that means this is going to be 2 divided by 2 squared. And this is going to be this, easy, okay? Now inside, that's going to simplify down to like 1, okay? And when I square that 1, you're like, well, Rush, why do you keep writing 1 down? We know 1 squared is 1. Because it's important, because I'm trying to draw emphasis, because when numbers are the same, I can't really point to them and say they're different if they're not written in a different color. And that's important. So there's that one. So what this tells me is by doing a b over 2 and then squaring it and me getting the blue one, that's the number I need to put in here. Okay, the blue one. Okay, that's going to be the guy that makes it perfectly factorable. Okay, now inside the parentheses, it's done. It's how it's going to be. There's no more room. So the only place left for me to balance things out are outside the parentheses. Okay, now if I put in that 1, here's what's going to seem like magic. So here we go. We're going to have to be real magical here. Okay, so if this 1, okay, you got to look at this. It's very important, okay? If the one that is in blue is inside the parentheses, this is what we call nesting. It is inside of something else, okay? So that, in fact, is not a 1. Anybody know what number that actually is? It is actually, if you were to distribute this out, it's like x squared plus 4x plus 2. So if you put that 1 in, it's really not a 1. It's really acting like a 2 when it comes out in the real world. It's nesting right now, okay? So it's really a 2. So what do you need to do to balance out that 2? Because remember, it's supposed to add up to be 0, right? We don't want to unbalance the equations, okay? So the number that balances out the number 2, which is really what it is, because 2 times 1 is 2, right? Is negative 2. So the number that balances out needs to be a minus 2. Okay, very, very magical, very magical. So please note this, okay, guys. Go back and look at this again. It's a huge piece, okay. That even because that 1 is the number you need to put in, okay, the number you're going to have to take out is going to be the opposite of whatever that number is. But what determines that is what happens when you multiply this coefficient times that number, right? Because it's nested on the inside. You got to think about what number that would be when you broke it free. Broke it free. All right, so that ends up being that. So how I really would like to display my notes then is like this. Okay, so we are right here. We figured out all this. I gave you a whole cut of the puzzle, but let's write it all down so we can take really good notes here. Okay, now step 3. Put in the completed square that we calculated in step 2, right? And balance it out. Okay, and notice I didn't say put it in and take it out. I said balance it out because you don't necessarily know what number is there until you start thinking about it. It's not always 1-to-1 because it's nested inside of a parentheses. So you get f of x equals x squared plus 2x, right? Plus 6, and I need to add something in here. The thing I need to add in is that 1. I should have made that plus sign that was there, but here we go. Okay, so here's the plus sign. Okay, now what number is that actually? Well, I need that 2 that was out here. What number is that actually? Well, it's not really a 1. It is a positive 2. It's a positive 2. So that means if this times that gives me 2 times 1 is positive 2, then in fact, to balance a positive 2, what do I need to balance a positive 2? That's right, a negative 2. Okay, so completed the square, we put it in, then we balance it out. Okay, so that's the biggest thing you got to get behind that. Now, once that's done, step 4, okay, basically clean everything up and put everything into its completed square form. Okay, so we'll say step 4, finally complete the square. Now, that means it's going to be f of x equals 2 times x plus 1 squared, and this is going to give me plus 4 on the outside. So now I am now officially in a position to determine the vertex, the x and y-intercepts, and the axis of symmetry. Now, how do I know it's going to be x plus 1 squared? Well, I could factor that, or I could just know that whatever b over 2 is, So this number right here, this red one, that's what's going to be whatever that guy is. If you don't believe me, check the work. So this is what mathematicians do. They just find out patterns and puzzles of crap, and then they think they're famous, right? So check the work. That factors into that, and it just so happens that coincides with that. That's how it works out. This is coincidence, right? But it's a cool coincidence because it's one less thing we have to worry about, okay? So bottom line is, now we can determine the vertex, axis of symmetry, X and Y intercepts. Really, really, really simple, okay? So we're already 15 minutes in. So once again, we put stuff in, we take stuff out, balance it out. So check this out. What if this thing, and I always like to do what if scenarios because I can get through an example much quicker and not burn up as much time. What if this number was not a positive 2 in the beginning, right? So in the beginning, this is actually a negative 2, right? Well, what would actually change? Nothing, really. Still going to be a 2 over 2 gives you this 1, right? And that gives you that 1. So you still need to add that in. This is negative now, right? But check this out. This is where things is interesting. Because if this is 1 and that's negative 2, that means this is a negative 2, right? And we're in the interest of balancing things. So check it out. If this is going to be a negative 2, then this wouldn't be a negative 2 any longer. It would be a positive 2. So it'll look like if this thing was officially negative, oh, well, that's a minus 2 in my head, so it has to be a plus 2. So I could be adding something on the inside, and that thing's actually negative. So therefore, to balance it out, I would have to add something to the outside. It's really weird, but it's because this number was negative. Okay, so I just want to bring that to your guys' attention. All right, so this is the basics. Doesn't get much harder than this, guys, all right? So if you can complete the square, you can pull out the vertex and the axis of symmetry and the X and Y intercepts. And then life is really good. All right, guys. You guys are all set for Chapter 7. Next time, well, Chapter 8.7. Next time, we'll talk about me and why I have a unicorn. I have unicorn sprinkles on my cereal every morning as we talk about sign charts and nonlinear inequalities and how we solve them and how they use them. It's the most important section I think we're going to teach you this semester. And if you do not know how to do those, then that's a problem. So we need to make sure we're good to go. All right, guys. If you don't, like I say at the end of every video, okay, in order to do some things you've never done, you're going to have to go to places you've ever been and experience some new things, all right? So always keep your head pushing, go towards those failures. We're ready to rock and roll. I'll see you guys on the next video.